Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Wayfarer podcast, season 2, episode 2. Talking about fear. How we doing, everybody? Got the whole cast almost here. We got
Katya,
Zach,
Riley,
and not Jonathan. He couldn't make it tonight, which is
so
rip.
sad.
Such a bummer.
I miss you.
all right.
I fear he's not here.
Ooh, that was a great introduction,
Ooh.
Jared.
Wait, what are we talking about tonight?
Wouldn't you believe it? It is fear. Fear is what we're talking about. So I really like starting sentences with "I fear."
Oh
I
my
think
gosh,
it's a fun,
that's my favorite trend.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's like, I fear that I like Riley's mustache too much.
It makes you sound a lot smarter.
Yeah, it's a good thing. What are y'all's, so to get kicked off into fear, Riley, you didn't say anything. I thought I was going to get something out of you.
I didn't know how to respond. I appreciate it.
completely baffled, but I'm like, I don't know what to say.
You weren't expecting a compliment, I'm sure. That was probably the shocking thing. What are y'all's phobias? What are like the silly little fears that we all have? You know, like
Fear Jonathan's never coming back.
Oh,
whoa.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
That,
He'll be
felt-
back.
that didn't feel fun or silly.
that's
It was silly.
Yeah.
okay. I feel like an old phobia of mine. I mean, it's still there. I used to fear climate change when I was in high school.
Mm.
I still kind of fear that.
I was going to say, we had like 2 hurricanes
just
right
came
back.
through
Kinda
back-to-back
made me believe
We literally just got through 2 hurricanes. It's still there. I
Kinda
still fear
starting to
that.
believe it.
Mother Nature can be scary but beautiful, so I think I fear that one.
It's not fun or light either. Zach, save us. Is there a fun? Never seeing my friend again. The whole earth going down.
It's
the
also
drain.
Halloween
I was
season.
thinking spiders, like ghosts.
It's also
something
Halloween
casual.
season right now. There's a lot of scary movies out that actually have me in my nightmares.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like the Smile one. Have you seen that one?
I don't even want to see that
I
stuff.
haven't
I legitimately am afraid of that stuff. I
It's
saw
scary.
like an advertisement for No Sleep October, and
Yeah.
it was just all horror movie, like one after
Oh.
another. And I was like, I don't know. A lot of fear is fun in some ways. People get exhilaration out of that, but I don't.
It's like a horrible idea for someone who, like me, like deals with like at night. I don't know why, but I get so anxious. Like before I go to bed, all of a sudden I think maybe that's my fear. Before I go to bed, I think of everything under the sun that I have to do the next day, or something maybe I didn't do, and then I lay there and I'm like, oh my gosh, but then I fall asleep, so it's chill. That's my fear
Nice.
of not. Did you guys ever watch? This is a quick little sidetrack. Did you guys ever watch that episode of Phineas and Ferb when like when Baljeet comes out in the F? He's wearing a F on his paper, and that was his biggest fear. I had a horror nightmare the other day where I felt that. So I just graduated college, so my dream was that I hadn't submitted something all semester, but then I woke up from my nightmare and I'm like, I'm not in school anymore. So that's a valid fear of mine.
Yeah.
Not submitting something, but I'm not in college. So thank you guys for my TED Talk. Anyone else want to share their fears?
What are you afraid of? What's your fun
Jared's
phobia?
afraid of nothing, I thought.
My Five Guys coming late.
Oh my gosh.
Ooh, those
Wait, I
Cajun
thought,
fries
I thought
being
it wasn't
cold.
Five Guys season anymore. It was something else.
It's the season fries season back,
If you had a penny every time you talked about Five Guys on this podcast.
Shit, I'd have like a quarter right now. That'd be unbelievable. Man, I'd be rolling in nickels.
Oh,
It'd be unbelievable.
What are you actually afraid of, though?
What am I actually afraid of? Not becoming who I want to be.
Whoa. Talk about funny.
It was
Mic
supposed to be
drop.
light
Hey,
and fun.
being
Oh,
on a
yeah.
corporate job the rest of my life, or my partner's calling me ever. Love you guys. Just kidding. None of them are 18 to 30, so they shouldn't be listening. I'm just joking.
That's crazy.
What else?
Zach, did you say what you were afraid of?
I think that I have the fun fears that are super lighthearted, and then I have like legit
Like
fears that I
actual
have to work
fears.
through. Yeah. So we'll get to those later. I think the fun one, I fear like coming downstairs and having not prepped the coffee. Like that's a legitimate, sometimes right at the end of the day, I'll have that. Did I do it or did I not? And that's like a fun one.
Like in your time, like you have a timer? Does it?
No,
like,
you have to come down and make it, but I like to set it all up so that you can just come down and
press
do
the
it.
button.
Yeah. And then sometimes I fear that I wouldn't have done that, and then I'll miss it, and then I won't have coffee. I like coffee a lot.
That's a good
Especially
fear.
Freedom Roast from Buddy Brew. You can go online, order it, $3, fights human trafficking. Go do that.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. Fear not
Good
having coffee.
advertisement.
Yeah. I fear not
I
having
like that.
coffee.
I agree with that one.
Give
Honestly,
me-
Coffee's so good.
it's such a way of life. Or
Yeah.
even when I'm on like vacation, the
drinking
first
some.
thing I think of, I know we're both drinking coffee.
Thank
And
you.
oh my gosh,
Brew
everyone.
good, do good.
That's
Cheers.
right.
There
Cheers.
we go.
Thank you.
Cheers. It's such a way of life. Like even when I'm traveling, I like wake up and I'm like, let's go to a coffee shop. Like it's such a lifestyle.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you.
There you go.
Cheers. Well, this is fun. Fears is, one of the many challenges going into the Wayfarer journey. And that's what's so fun about this season too, is that we get to explore all of that and dive into the different things that we're going to face. And, that's the wayfaring is, it's not wandering, it is purposeful journey, leading towards and walking in hope. And I think that's just such an important distinction, as we're going through this. There are a lot of hard things that we're going to be talking about. And, part of the wayfaring adventure is as you walk, as you, don't run away from these things, but embrace these things, you get a lighter and a more, more wonder in your day to day, which I think is a lot of fun. So really excited to kind of continue to do that in this season, because I think it's important. I think there's so much depth in the journey, and not just all the good and the fun and the joy, but also the hard going through that. So really excited to continue to get to walk in a hope and a lightness and an adventure of it. Everybody's favorite adventure movie has hard parts.
Yeah. When they're
course.
going somewhere too. I think that's that key distinction between wander and wayfarer. If we're not going anywhere, and if life has no telos, it has no aim, there's no ascent that we're making, then it gets hard when doubt comes or fear comes or temptation comes. But when the journey is, we are moving together toward an aim, then we can call each other to it. So I love that. Well done.
I will say there's something special too with like our community, even like in our Wayfarer Tampa nights, and being here at this table. There's something different of like when you enter into a conversation and you like look into someone's eyes and you can just tell that they're willing to put it all on the table. Wherein I think in our culture, it's very like almost looked down upon if you're walking in with like your feelings on your sleeve or your heart on your sleeve. It's like almost like a sign of weakness, but I think there's a lot of strength in that too, where like how you feel and you're willing to continue stepping forward in that journey together, saying like I'm not going to settle for anything less than this. So I have to say I'm excited to get into fear. I think it's going to be exciting to see what we land on.
Yeah, absolutely. And shout out to the Wayfarer Nights. We had our first one
Super good.
last
That was
month,
so
and it
much
was
fun.
so much fun. So if you didn't make it out that time, you should come out the next time, which is coming up, I think, November 15th.
Yeah.
November 15th at the Buddy Brew on Kennedy.
It was so great. There's nothing, no vibe comparison to a coffee shop with warm lighting at night.
So good.
It's the best, especially with good people. Ugh.
Yep. Yeah, and we have the benefit of having that relationship with Buddy Brew, that they've really made a home on Kennedy, and that's where we launched the other podcast, Lab the Podcast, and they really extended that hospitality and made a home. And at the Wayfarer night the other night, you felt that when we were talking about doubt. You're looking around again with people who are going somewhere and they desire to go on a journey that's, again, not just week to week, but it's like, no, this whole life is a journey. And I'm looking across the table with people giving each other permission to say, hey, doubt's not going away. We're going to wrestle with that, but there's a healthy way to do it. And I think we get to do the same thing with fear. So super good.
Yeah, I agree.
So fun. So fear, I think it was Augustine that said fear is the enemy of love. And trying to think about that in our own lives. Katya, when was the last time, you kind of had that battle of, something you really fear getting in the way of something that you loved?
Yeah. I think that with fear in life, I've always been bad with change. That's something that I've always struggled with, because in change, there's that fear of, what if it's something I'm not comfortable with? What if my life isn't going to look the way it is? What if it goes down for the worse? And so it's like in my phase of life right now, transitioning into pretty much the rest of my life, post-grad, college, that whole thing, I think there's been a fear of time in the sense that like I fear not using my time in the way it needs to be used because I'm in such a vulnerable time. I keep saying time, I apologize. I'm in a very vulnerable time of my life when I'm 23. So it's like I'm a young woman. I literally have like, it's like, especially for a girl, I think your 20s are so if they're hard for a girl specifically, because it, especially in the Christian community, it's very much like get married young, have family young, do all the things, but be like strong and smart. And there's a lot of pressure on that end, and I know that there is for guys too in the other side of the world. But I think there's just a lot of thought of like, what if the next step isn't what I need to be doing in order to set up my life for the way I want it to be. So that's a very valid fear, I think, right now in my life. But with that being said, at the same time, with that change, I've learned a lot about just allowing life to be, like allowing the transitions of life to just happen, because I think that's just life in general. Like I that's always going to happen. Like changes will always present themselves, and you'll have to just let go and be okay with it, because there's nothing, life is going to make it, run its course, just like Mother Nature. I fear you. But like it's
Thanks for watching, Mother Nature. We appreciate your subscribe.
It's true. Like it's just gonna happen. The 2 hurricanes came to Tampa, and it's like you couldn't do anything. Like you just had to prepare yourself enough, and what was gonna happen was gonna happen, and you just had to the next day know how you were gonna stand back up and continue living your life. So that's where I feel I am at this very moment.
No, go.
I feel like that's a very, for you, fresh, because you just graduated, in the last couple of months. What does that look like to kind of like work? It seems like you have a healthy mindset of that. What was that journey to get to that mindset, and what does that still look like? Because I'm assuming it's not like finished. You're not like, I don't fear
by all means,
ever anymore.
I'm in that fear. I just to get to this point.
Yeah. What does it look like to kind of get to that? At least the view of fear in that healthy way. What does that process look like for you?
I'm a big counsel girl. Like I am hand in hand with my counsel, where I think that's the reason I think I make such like cautious decisions in life, is because I'll talk to 10 people before I make one decision, because like I want to make sure that I'm doing what is best for me. So when it comes to fear, it's like almost to the point of being annoying. I'll talk about it with everyone. So at least for me, I would just say I've gotten to this point of dealing with my fears and struggles simply based off of the wisdom of people around me. Like Zach and Cammie, Zach's wife, Cammie, and like you guys, and then people I meet like just on a day-to-day basis, and my parents and my older sister, and just like literally asking people, because everyone has such a treasure chest of knowledge that they're willing to give. People love to give wisdom. Like give someone an opportunity, and it's like, I don't know, you're making someone feel special at the same time. There's like a beautiful relationship in that. And I think that's what we're creating here too.
Yeah, that's powerful. I definitely relate to that. Like with like seeking the counsel in those moments. I feel like that's just a good encouragement even to like others who are like, I think of myself even like navigating fear, like probably something I should do more is probably like talk it out with somebody, not like try to go through it on my own, and so like talk to somebody else like through that fear, and seeking counsel from like, the trusted people in your corner and stuff like that. I definitely like, I can hear you saying that, and me being like, yeah, I need to do that more.
Yeah.
So.
'Cause it's like, you're a one-track mind. I mean, Zach has a whole barrel full of wisdom that I don't have, whereas like I just live in my world, and I can create delusions and fantasies and crazy things. But then if I speak to someone who's objectively looking at me, they're going to say, Katya, you're crazy. Stop thinking like that. Like throw that fear out the window. You can do whatever you want. So yeah, counsel, long story short.
And people who have a different view, I love that. Like one of the fears I've struggled with a long time, of just like being afraid of things in the medical sphere. And when you get with a good doctor that you trust, and they can sit down and do just what you said, like they look at it through their lens and they say, I know you're looking at this and you're coming to this conclusion, but here's what I know, here's what I've seen, and let me help you kind of move in that direction. You can only do that with people who have a different view on it than we do. Like we're seeing what we're seeing and coming to the conclusions we're coming, some irrational, some rational, but getting a view from somebody outside who has a particular lens on something can be so, so refreshing. And to marry it, I love that Augustine quote that you said, like fear is the enemy of love. And just like, I was thinking, as you said, that early 20s, I'm afraid I won't become what I hoped I would become, or what I dreamt I'd become, or reach a goal, or, get there quick enough. And to have that, I love authors' old books. You think about sitting around and Augustine looking over and just going, fear is the enemy of love. And you go, man, if I chewed on that for a little bit at my stage of life, well, what is love? What is love? What's the lens that love has on my early 20s? What's that voice saying about that moment in life and what's happening? And you contrast that with the fear voice of, you better figure it out now and accomplish it now. I mean, it's just such a great way to contrast that. I love that.
Yeah. And it's like, I almost look up to people who are also in their 20s and like they just do things, where it's just like, they just do it. Like there's a lack of fear in certain areas, but at the same time I look at them, I'm like, you're crazy. Like there's so much of a lack of fear.
Depends on what you're doing.
Yeah, it's like there's such a lack of fear that you're just like, I think that it's necessary at the same time to prepare. Like, like you want to live to see the next day,
Yeah, Jonathan on his one wheel. For me, it's always like,
yeah.
No, Jonathan's okay, for the record.
Yeah,
hopefully.
Oh my God.
We haven't gotten a text from him, so
yeah, I think that's how I go about that. But yeah, I think it's valid, and I think a lot of people, I mean, that's the girl's perspective, and I think a lot of girls can relate with me for that one. What's the guy's perspective of walking through your 20s? What would you say like a major fear for you guys is? Because it's a whole different set of stuff. Like the guy like stereotype is, there's a lot of weight on your shoulders. Like you're going to have to like be the man and all that. Do you feel that?
Is that true? Do you still feel that? Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think that's still, present in today's age where, being not in every, I think it all is very unique to, in relationships, thinking about being like the provider for a family, like I think that's different for everybody, but you still feel that, especially when you're single, trying to find relationships, or even just outside of that, of being someone who can provide for yourself and being like a put together person. I feel like there's a ton of pressure for guys not to be messy and to be buttoned up in a way. But it's also funny because I feel like culturally there's a lot of guys who are just kind of messy and have like embraced that, and like women hate that and like complain about that all the time, of these like messy guys who just, don't have any put together, not to throw shade, but like sports gamble and drink beers all the time, like do all these kind of things and aren't like buttoned up in life. And I think, there can be a ton of pressure to go the complete opposite of that, of be, the perfect person. And I think especially in that like dating sphere, it's like there's so much pressure to try to be everything, especially in all facets of like making money, physically looking attractive, being nice, going to church, like doing all these different things. I think there's so much of that.
Yeah, I was thinking definitely like kind of on the like physical side. Like I feel like a lot, like there's a pressure to be like masculine always, like a pressure of like for men to always have that, like we're strong, we don't cry, we don't have emotions, we're, that's kind of like still a general, I think we've made like progress on like getting away from that just unhealthy view of, I think, toxic masculinity of that view, and just like getting away from that to more, right view. which is like, no, it's okay to go through emotions, and like, no, we don't have it all together. No, we're not always strong. Like, we're gonna fall at times. Like, that's a part of life and growing. And so I think we've done a good job of getting away from that. But that's still like definitely like, I feel like in our generation, it's still a big, just like stereotype, and like just something that like people kind of expect from guys still. And maybe people don't even, maybe like women don't expect that from us still, but like there's still, just in guy culture alone, like there is still that kind of like competitiveness of like, well, like you're not gonna cry in front of another guy, like that's just not right, you know. And it's like, no, like what why wouldn't I cry in front of like my best friend, you know? Like, and so I think that is still kind of, that's kind of, I feel like one of the things going on in our generation for like going through your 20s and stuff still.
Yeah, I think the thing on both sides is that both people feel like both guys and girls feel like they need to be more, like they're not enough. And like the fear to not be enough for somebody, or not to be enough in society, or not to be enough at work. Like I think all of that is like a deeply rooted one that, I mean, in my 20s were a train wreck, most of it. So it was like I knew I wasn't enough. Like I wasn't going to be enough career-wise because I didn't have a job. And it's like, so I think there's like parts of my life that like I reconciled that with pretty quick. Like career wasn't going to be satisfying because I couldn't keep a job, you know, which it's like kind of a blessing from God that like that never became an identity. But then it was like, all right, well, I'm going to do stand-up comedy. So it's like, although I don't have a stable job, at least I'm doing something cool with my life. And so I think you can very easily get on this like journey of, I just want to be enough. I just want to like have hobbies. I'm going to join a pickleball league. I'm going to, you know, run half marathons. It's like whatever it takes to be enough. And I think that's, I mean, it still can very easily bleed into your life. Like I had to like reconcile a lot this year. Like, do I like stand up, or do I like telling people I do stand up? Because I think it's not that interesting, but oftentimes when I bring it up that I do that, people are very interested in that, and that's fun. That's fun to be interesting. So
I think that goes, one of our favorite household philosophers here, Joseph Pieper, who ties kind of all fear to loss or diminishment, and says at the end of it, and I think Augustine hinted at that, Aquinas, others have said, really at the root of fear, what are we afraid of? And it's that sense of we're going to lose something, whether it's credibility or an opportunity or a spouse or the right timing. And I think that's a really important thing when we're talking about fear, to kind of get right down to the root of it and go, okay, what's behind fear? You know, well, I think that's pretty accurate. Like, fear is the enemy of love. Like, love is trying to say something and develop something. Like, God is love, and there's a being who is love, and fear is the enemy of that, of God's being for us. You could almost think of fear as being against us. And the fear voice is loss and diminishment. You're not enough. You'll never be enough, right? And I think that's so wise to keep that, like, because when fear comes up and you go, oh, I'm afraid to go. I'm afraid to try. I'm afraid that I won't be enough. I'm afraid I won't be. Just ask that second question. Okay, so what am I afraid of? What's the loss there? What's the diminishment? How would that, whatever it is, how would that make me smaller? And just by bringing that into the light, you can start to make sense of it and at least have a thoughtful conversation with it. And it's not just all over the place. Be interesting to explore some of the stuff that we're all afraid of, right? Not being enough. What's the loss or diminishment on the other side of that?
I feel like it would be more of like a you thing. Like, I feel like feeling like not being enough is like, in my sense, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I'm delusional. Like, I feel like I'm being delusional when I think I'm not enough, because it's like, I don't know, when I'm in my highs and I'm achieving and I'm doing great, I'm the same person I am when I'm not achieving things and not doing great. It's the same Katya. So it's like, I feel like I'm just being delusional whenever I'm like, I'm not going to do this thing. I'm not going to be enough. No one's going to like me. I'm going to be old and single. And it's like, I feel like I'm just being delusional. Like, right?
Yeah, that's nice. It's flipped for most people. I would say I feel delusional when I'm like, oh, I'm great, and I am old and single, so it's
No, Jared.
He is single.
Oh,
Do not.
who needs date when dating apps don't work? So you go on a
Slide
podcast.
into his DMs.
Do not slide into my DMs.
Please do.
Dude, please do it.
If you like Jared,
Please
slide
do.
into his DMs.
Half our
He
viewers
is
are my
such a
family.
friendly
Yeah.
guy, open to everything.
Open to what? Open to everything. He's desperate. These are the kind of things people say about me that make me feel so full. But that is a very healthy to be like when I'm thinking negatively of myself, I'm delusional. I'm not thinking properly. Like that's.
Yes.
I think that's a point of view and a way of thinking that is healthy. That I would say like I struggle with that a ton, where I can. And I'll be delusional on both sides, where I'll be like hyper negative about myself, and then I'll also be minutes away like hyper positive of like way over the top, like prideful almost. And it's like fascinating, but like having that healthy view of when you're in that fearful state, I think is like really good to acknowledge that like, oh, I'm like not in a place to
Not in
like
a good
really
spot, yeah.
like these aren't true thoughts. Like I forgot who said this, but it was just like any thought after like 1 a.m. It's like you can't really put a lot of weight on it because it's like it's late, you're tired. It's like you don't think straight. And there was like one night, it was like I think 1:45 a.m. and I was in my apartment just spiraling, and I was just like, life is falling apart, man. Like,
Go to sleep.
It's not going well.
Go to sleep.
I woke up the next morning like, man, I was really falling apart last night. Like, everything was fine. I just
So
needed
funny.
to sleep.
Like the montage of you like going crazy in your room and then waking up with coffee and
Yeah,
just
I was like,
chilling. I feel like
"Wow."
that happens often.
That was bad. Stone cold sober, by the way. I don't think that I was like a couple beers in being crazy. It's like, no, I was sober, spiraling. So
Oh my
I think that's can also, but like similar to me being really tired, I think we can be in other like states of mind. Or like I drove overnight recently from North Carolina to Florida, and I was up for almost 24 hours.
Yeah.
And
that
it was like
crazy of you.
the next couple of days, it's like, well, you really can't, whatever you feel right now, it's like it's probably highly affected by the fact that,
Yeah.
like I hated my job the next day. Of course I hated my job the next day. I had
Yeah.
no sleep. But it's like, so you have to like, I think being able to be in those moments of like capturing where you're at and like knowing like, oh, well, I feel this way because of this, I think is really helpful and good.
Also to note though, not to discredit what you feel. So it's like, yes, I'm delusional sometimes, but there's a feeling behind that too. Where it's like, I mean, in your sense, when you woke up the next day and you're like, I'm tired, I don't want to be at work. That's like a different vibe. But like if that night you were like, AKA, quote unquote, spiraling, like there was an emotion behind that you shouldn't discredit. That's something like you write down in the journal and you jump back into the next day. You know what I mean?
For sure. I think
This is for the record. We don't
Yeah, absolutely.
look over feelings.
I think like every like fear you can have, it's like inherently the base level of it could be good or bad, but like where it goes, I think is where it can be really, dangerous. And like I think that was like I think it was about work. I was worried about getting fired, if I could remember what it was. And at the time, I was not doing well in sales, and there was like layoffs were coming. Like I very much could have been fired. So it wasn't this like, oh, Jared's making up stuff and like spiraling. It's like, no, it's a real fear, but how I was like taking it to, I'm failing at life. Like life's about to fall apart. Like, oh, this is a disaster. Like, I think what comes out of those fears, it's like there's a way to healthily look at that, and there's a way to like irrationally look at it. And I'm very quick to, spiral and be quick, like go down the rabbit hole of everything is falling apart. And I think that's where I would say, like, you're absolutely on point, that it's like those spirals, there might be a truth in that. And that's the most dangerous thing, is that there is, it wasn't completely false. It wasn't like this complete lie. Like if my fear was that I was purple, it's very easy to get over that because I am not purple.
Yeah.
Don't color edit me purple.
Please.
But the fact was I could be fired. That fear wasn't completely made up.
Yeah, we're given this gift of the capacity to feel fear, and that's a good, like that's a good thing, right? If you're about to walk off a cliff and you have some sense of fear, I think you said it a second ago, is it helpful? And we can build a muscle, we can build a relationship with it to be like, okay, fear is telling me that I might experience some loss or diminishment, and that's a good thing on the radar, right? You just mentioned the storms we've been through. Like if we're glued every time a cloud goes by, if we think that that's an impending hurricane, like that's not helpful. But weather radar is good. Like look out there and make sense of it. But we can learn to be really good at that. When it moves into the irrationality and we keep feeding that fear despite the evidence of, and that's why prudence and, you know, what is real, and can I look at things objectively, and can I get counsel to do it so that I can get a view on it? Because fear can be a gift. I mean, I'd be curious if you probably all have stories of a time where you were legitimately afraid of something, and it was probably good that you were afraid of it, right? Even like we love small business, love it, but one day after a hurricane, after everybody's been closed for 4 days, my first thought was I would love to go out to sushi. My second thought was, I don't know if I'm going to do that, right? Like, his odds are somebody was like, I think it's fine.
I know.
Like, no, I think that's a good fear.
Yeah.
Like, give it 3 days. Like,
They got it off
Very
Bayshore.
true.
Yeah,
You know?
like,
Very true.
Yes, right? I think it's a
Got it off
it's
Bayshore.
a sell by date. Yeah. Has fear ever been a good thing for you? Has it ever served you, not been your master? I think that's the thing, right? Like, fear is good because it can serve us. It's a gift. We've been given a brain that can feel, and emotions that can feel that. So it's a gift if it's not irrational and over the top, flooded.
I feel like the first thing that comes to my mind is like when I'm out, like when I was in college and I'd go out and like I would encounter somebody and just like know something was off. And then I like not feared, but like had this inkling of like there's something not right in this situation, and it would take me out of a lot of bad situations. So it's like that fear of like what that person was about to do kept me from a lot of really bad things that could have happened.
Book recommendation, The Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker. Wonderful book about the gift of fear. And one of the things Gavin DeBecker talks about is that intuition, that thing. And he uses this example. He says, there's no deer in the forest that upon hearing a cracking branch doesn't put its ears up and then immediately start to move away from that. And humans have this incredible rational capacity to overrule that intuition sometimes. He looks nice, Ted Bundy, right? Like, you know, like, so we've been given this incredible gift of fear. And I love what you said. Like when your intuition says like, pay attention, that's a gift. Like you look at any other creature and they have this ability to read data intuitively, and your brain is doing this masterful job. You just don't want it to take over irrationally, right? But it's good to pay attention to it, right?
I know. And I feel like as I get older, like I feel like as kids have such great intuition. They have such great, like, they can tap into their spiritual side so well, where it's like kids see ghosts, Kanye West. Like they
She did that just for you.
I did that just for you, Jared. It's like they have such a good way of connecting with things, and I feel like as I get older, I'm like getting more and more disconnected with that, just because it's like we have to lock in with that logical side of like setting up life and being adults and all that jazz. But like being able to be receptive to the feelings and actually acting on it is a way that I feel like I'm like trying to strengthen that intuition instead of ignoring it. And I think that's why a lot of people get into pretty bad situations.
Listen to your intuition in those contexts. And context. Do you have one where fear's been good? Served you?
I think like career decisions wise, like thinking about like taking a job or not taking a job, like moving forward or not. Some of that probably is just like past, going through the issues of where I'm a fit, where I'm not, and where I could, potentially be a little bit more risky of a move. So just trying to, I think, as I've waded through some of those decisions, thinking about like the security of those jobs and that being a high priority for me of, this has high job security. Like, this is not a role that gets laid off typically.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that has been really helpful and like good for me, because I've felt very secure in my job in the last like 3 years, where, my first 3 years out of work, I had like 5 jobs, which is just like insane, and fired for 3 of them, so it's like, making better decisions, partially out of like a fear of being jobless, I think has been good. We're doing better now. Let's go.
It's so crazy. This rolls into, I'll let Riley go in a second, but this rolls into temptation next time for the next conversation. But and I'll save the story for next time. You'll have to come back for the story. But I remember, in a vocational context, being tempted to make a very, very bad choice, to profit in a particular personal way that would harm my employer. And I remember being afraid of the consequence and thinking through, like feeling both those things at the same time. Temptation drawing me one way, and this fear of loss of a job, loss of status, loss of credibility and a name. And so it served me in that moment. I have a ton of those where fear has served me in a healthy way. But in relationship to temptation, like being afraid that what I'm about to do would cause harm or loss or diminishment on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine isn't necessarily a time that fear was good. It's more of a fear was bad, and now I get to look back and know why it was bad. And it was in a past relationship, and it was I had the fear of the relationship wasn't going well. And it was kind of making the decision of, all right, is the relationship going to end, or is it going to keep going? And I, as I started to think about that, the fear of like just like that ending and just like soaked in, and I was like, it like crumbled me, and I was like, I don't want it to end, because now I'm, and that was one of those moments where I started letting fear kind of control like my actions and my mind. And so the relationship did end, and it should have probably ended, and it kept going. And, it was a rough 3 more months of that relationship of just unhealthy time. There's plenty of great memories from that relationship too still. But it was just, it was a moment where I let fear just start controlling what I was doing in my mind. And then those next 3 months, I constantly was just living in fear. It was like, I didn't go out because you don't want the fear of like, oh, what's he doing? Because it was a long distance relationship at that point in time. And it was just like, I'm not. So I literally let fear, like I let fear control my life to the point where I was like just locking myself in my room every night, like not going out, hanging out with friends, which was like really bad for me and my mental health and stuff at that time. And so that was like I saw it. I was like, I probably should end the relationship. And then I was like, nope, because I don't want to, lose this.
Go through the loss.
Yeah, exactly. And what was that Augustine quote where it's like fear, like love is the enemy of fear. And it's like, that's like a prime example, because like I was in a relationship where I loved that person, and like I ended up fear was in there, and I let fear end up controlling that relationship, which obviously is not good for a relationship. You should not be in a relationship run on fear, just so you know. And it was just not good. And, I was really broken after it all. And, it eventually ended not by my choice. And it was a tough time, and just letting fear control it I'd not advise you to do that. And now thankfully I get to learn from that mistake, and don't let fear control even your emotions. And don't live in fear. If you're living in fear, probably shouldn't, like not in that context at least. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think circle that. I'll throw it to you, but you just kind of hinted at, I think, the way forward. Like if there's a little crux where we can reach to get up out of that unhealthy fear space. You kept saying it over and over that fear became controlling. I was controlled by fear. I think seeing that, you're like, okay, you've kind of circled in on the way out of fear.
Yeah. What did you say? Fear if you're living in fear, you probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
I like that.
Mhm.
I like that. That's a little better than you'll never regret a good experience. I
That
like
one
it.
makes sense.
It is. It does. They all make
You'll
sense.
never regret a positive.
A
I said
positive.
you'll never regret a positive experience.
Good,
Mhm.
positive.
Objectively, you
Pretty
can look at things and say this is going to be positive or this is going to be negative.
I fear we'll have this conversation again.
Here's a question though, like kind of jumping to more serious, but like with fear, like I said, you should never live in fear. But like, what if there is a healthy fear, and like, what does that look like, and should you live in a healthy fear?
Yeah, I think that we've kind
Yes.
All right.
Sorry.
Next question.
Next.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what, we've kind of hashed out, that it's like, there's appropriate levels of it. Like there's, being scared of losing your job and not being able to pay rent is like a
The healthy fear.
reasonable.
That's healthy.
That's good. We
Yeah.
like that. But me spiraling at 1:45 a.m., probably ordering Five Guys, it's like
Twice.
that's not healthy.
2 pennies.
Yeah. Five Guys, man. I love you guys. Sponsor me.
One day.
One day. But thinking about healthy fear, bad fear, the Bible talks a lot about the fear of God,
Mm.
which is
Yeah.
crazy. So we've established there's a good kind of fear. What has y'all's relationship been with having a fear of the Lord of God?
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up,
Mhm.
Jaron.
Yeah, I think it's the way forward in that conversation. It's good.
Well, I was thinking, like, right when you brought that up. I feel like we've talked about this in the past where we've said that if your fear of something here is greater than the fear of you not living out God's will for you, then it's like that relationship. It should be like an immediate answer. Like if that thing isn't going to lead you towards what God is intending in your life,
Mm.
period.
Mm.
I mean,
Period.
the
Oh.
end. I feel like you can't get clearer than that. I mean, even in my own life with my fear of like the unknown, my fear of what if, it's like whatever happens is what God intended, as long as I'm making prudent decisions and taking counsel. I shouldn't fear the unknown, because as long as it's like according to living out for God and doing everything for the greater glory of Him, I shouldn't fear it.
Yeah, I think of like I feel, I don't know if this is even a healthy fear of God, but I feel like a lot of times the fear of God for me, it ends up being, a time where I feel like I'm, there's a sin, like I'm sinning or something, and I'm like, after that I'm like, oh, what if like, this, like the fear of God after that sin of being like, oh, what if this like has a really bad repercussion on my life, and it's like I was speeding, what if I get a speeding ticket? That's kind of like a first world problem kind of fear probably, but it's like that's a fear of mine. Like if I'm doing something wrong and like after I think of it and it's like, oh, what if there ends up being a repercussion and on my life because I'm living in sin against, and I'm doing something against God, like my sin is against God, and that's basically me saying no to my relationship with Him and turning away from it. And so that's like that's like a serious fear of God in my life. I feel like sometimes where I'm just like living in that.
Yeah, it's good. I love that you guys said that. Like, what if it's that clear? And sometimes in modernity, we mix everything up into this soup to try to give everything equal voice. And I love the idea that what if it is that clear? And the reality is that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And there is counsel after counsel in Scripture, like fear God. And we've tried to do so much gymnastics to try to like make that smaller and make that more palatable for us, and like make it easier for modern sensibilities to be like, okay, what does that actually mean? It just means to have some sort of high view. Yes. But what if it's that clear? That what if God is literally what's the biggest thing in your life? Like what's on the highest place, the greatest authority, the thing that is the greatest in your life? What if it's that clear? It's like if that thing is love, And my fear is the fear is the awesomeness of that. And it is, again, Lewis, not safe but good, right? You can't tame that. It is not safe but good. It is massive. God is ineffable. He's beyond us. Safe but good. If we have a proper view of God, and if Joseph Pieper is right, the loss and diminishment is relationship with God, the well done of God, am I sinning against that relationship? If that's properly calibrated, then I look over at this thing and I go, what can they do? Take my job, right? Or I can lose this or lose that, but that thing is so small compared to this thing in my life. I think I just told you guys that I got to screen the Bonhoeffer movie, and it was just amazing to watch that in film. That here's Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who has to confront the reality of the potential of death. You'll have to see the movie if you don't know his story, but he just had such a clear conviction that what are they going to do? Take my life? Like there's something so much greater that is governing my life and sovereign over my life, that he was fearless. I mean, it was incredible to see.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And I think it's when I think about like times, like I can struggle with like fear of like what my life is going to be a lot. And I think, that trusting God, fearing God the highest, like as you're still walking through that, I think there's still questions that linger like in that process. Like fearing God in the highest is a position you can take and you can walk. I mean, it's what we're talking about with wayfaring, like walk towards hope. And I think along the way, there's still, why didn't this happen? Why didn't that happen? Kind of thing. I didn't get the channel manager job that I wanted. And I think I talked about this in the last episode. And it was just like, why didn't that happen? And I watched another channel manager get fired in Florida. And I was like, well, doesn't seem to be a very safe position. So it's like, wow, like how God, even in something so simple and little as that, of like protecting me from getting into something that could be, something bad. It's like, man, how he is still working and shepherding in that. And so fearing him and following him, there's still going to be questions. Like I was still upset that I didn't get that role, but how he's working in that mystery, I think, is really huge.
Yeah. I think that idea of growth, we said this at the beginning of the podcast, like we're going to grow in these things. And so it can be both and. We can say like, yeah, to be love casts out fear. Perfect love drives out fear. The presence of God, who we're absolutely ultimately secure in our relationship with God, that does eliminate fear. And there's a lot that we have to get our minds around, that we travel through all of these different places where it's health or relationship or vocation or whatever. And we don't perfectly walk fearlessly, right? And yet we can grow in it. And you see a life like Bonhoeffer and you go, how is that possible? And I think that's exciting to go, man, what if at 25, my capacity to trust God has developed in such a way that things that I used to fear, actually, they don't have that same control over my life. Yeah. I can say that that's true. I mean, I'm still in process today at 47 years old, thinking through fear of loss of health, fear of loss of family, all those things that are most important to me. And I can feel experientially God inviting me, love inviting me to grow and to say, do you trust me enough that even those things that you fear losing, I have that in my sovereignty. Yeah. And I'm still growing in that. And I think there will be a day where maybe I taste a little bit more freedom in that area. And I think that's really cool. I think that it's possible. I think what my point is to not be imprisoned to, I have to get this perfect. And if I am failing at Christianity, if I have any sense of fear in my life, no, that is not a healthy view. And on the other side, to say, I'm imprisoned to always experience the same level of fear controlling my life. Nope. I think there's another way that we're trying to point to. Yeah. And I think a proper view of God is a way to start to keep that in view. Right?
Yeah. It's like an inevitably in the human experience.
Yes.
Like point case. And like, the moment we're not facing that fear, like we're in heaven. Right? Like at that point, like we've been rid of all of our mental worries and illnesses and doubts and fears and all that stuff.
Potential loss or diminishment is not anymore in the story.
So it's like fear is it's what makes us human.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah. What is that? The other side of that? We were Aquinas saying, only the person, is it Aquinas who says that only the person who doesn't love is somebody who won't fear, right? Like, if fear is the enemy of love, then you can try to live your life with absolutely no fear, but you won't love because attached to that is that reality of loss. That's wonderful.
And that's what the Stoics would always talk about, that you can't be attached to your children, your wife, or any of these things because they could die the next day. Yes. And it's like you don't want to be attached, off kilter because of that. You need to be disciplined to, even with your emotions, not to be connected, which is just like a crazy way to think about going through life, like not embodied, not embracing all of the human experience, which is fear and loss and grieving is a part of joy, happiness, and peace.
Isn't that amazing to think, like the triangulation between really feeling connected and loving, not that stoic position that says like have no attachment, but this idea that no, I love you enough that I fear the loss, right? Yeah. And then also a proper view of God that meets you and says, I've got you while you're feeling that, and says, keep loving, even though it's going to open you up to that feeling, make you vulnerable to that feeling of the pain of fear of loss, and God equally being right there. And you go, resolve that. Yeah. Can take this away or this away. And God's like, nope, exist right there. And I've got you in that. And yeah, I think that's a more real place.
Oh, yeah. Wow. That's deep stuff, guys.
Yeah.
Fear's not going away. I think some of it's really healthy. Yeah. It's a gift, right?
We gave some practical ways with doubts. What do we think are some practical ways to address fear in kind of the day-to-day?
Keep a big view of God.
Yeah.
However you do that, like, I think, like, again, the scripture is such a gift because you get to hear, ages of wisdom of people who have been near God giving you a proper view and getting your view back big again, because we can make God too small. So I think keeping big view of God, scripture does that.
Yeah. Examination of conscience.
Yeah.
Every night. I don't do that every night. I wish I did. But it's like, and so the Jesuits, they do this thing called the examination of conscience, where at night they'll think of like a couple things in their day that where God was in their day, and then they think of ways they can improve and all that stuff, and then they do a little prayer and they go to sleep. So I feel like that's a practical way.
Yeah, it's really good.
Shout out Jesuits.
Yeah. And just the awareness of that relationship with God in the prayer, right? Like I keep a big view of God. I let another voice outside my own head describe God and who he is in the parts that make me nervous, right? Uncomfortable. Like God is big. Keep that in view. Pray. Mm-hmm. And examination of conscience is a great to recognize.
I like the one you gave earlier, Katya, of like talking it out with somebody. Like if you're fearing something in your life, don't like go through it alone. Like talk about it with your friend, talk about it to, a mentor, somebody you look up to that, pours into you. Like I'm sure they would love to help guide you through that, and just be somebody in your corner, supporting you through that and being like, don't live in that. I wish I would have, been more, I would have done something like that back when I was going through, that really bad time of living in fear. And like, I wish I would have, not trapped myself in my room. And I wish I would have, actually opened the door and hung out with my friends and, talked about what I was going through with them, and been, vulnerable with them about that. And just, so that's my encouragement, don't go through, if you're fearing something, don't go through it alone. Talk about it with somebody.
Yeah. I love it.
I think too, like notice it, like you said, it's not bad, notice it, but like it's powerful, and recognize that it's a powerful thing. It's a gift that we've been given to notice this and to feel this thing. But like if you just go back and drink fear over and over and over again, it's going to have an effect on you. Yeah. And I've done that before, where it's like, I read something or I thought something or I went down a trail and then I stopped myself and was like, that's not going to lead to a healthy place. And then, 20 minutes later, I go right back to it. And I know better, right?
Yeah.
And then you go, that's not going to lead me anywhere. That data, that thing, I noticed it. Thank you. Yep, you could die of cancer, right? But for me to go back to that 7 or 8 times and dwell on that and put my vision there, that's not healthy.
I agree.
How about you, Jared?
Yeah, I think those are all good things. I feel like I tend to lean on people a lot. That is because it can be so easy, I think, outside to look into a situation and rightly acknowledge. I very quickly can with my friends when they bring up their fears, I'm like, well, that's crazy. That actually doesn't make sense because of X, Y, Z. And then in my own sense, I'm like, I'm scared that I'm purple, and they're like, what did you just say?
Walk that back
like how? What's in that cup? What are you drinking? So, it can be very easy to, I think, get other voices in there. Trusted people. I think that's also to be careful of, not just going to anybody to get that kind of advice. So. Yeah. And reach out to us if you don't have those people in your lives. Yeah. We'd be happy. Don't slide in my DMs.
Please do.
But,
Please do. Yeah.
Slide into the Wayfarer.
Can I say one more?
Sure.
I think go anyway, too. I would say work that muscle. This is something from somebody who's lived with a lot of fear for a long time, of do exercise the muscle of trusting God in the face of your fear. Like courage, the virtue of courage is not to not be afraid, but to see the fear, notice it, know what the loss or diminishment on the other side is, have a proper view of God and go, okay, if this is a prudent thing to do, then I'm going to go anyway. And I'm going to go through that fear. And that's kind of like doubt, right? Like, and I'm going to go. And as we do that, we do grow. So I think that's good too.
Yeah. Don't view the presence of fear as a diminishment of your faith.
I love that. Did you just
quote it?
Write that down.
Jared Thomas.
Jared Thomas.
Michael Scott.
This was a great conversation about fear.
Yeah. I know. I really enjoyed that. That was a great note to end it on, honestly. Yeah. Like, it always brings me back to who I am whenever I remember to, like, look up instead of, honing in on my own life.
Yep. I think that's even the trail map behind it's like this whole, you go back to season 1 and you're like, you know what? That creature creator relationship, like keep your vision up. And there's going to be times that you're afraid. Fact.
Oh yeah.
And the beautiful gift is, well, what do we do with that? And this journey together is like, oh, we have a way of navigating that together. It's good. Yeah.
It's good.
Thanks for bringing up fear.
Thanks, Jared.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for listening and engaging in the conversation, everybody. We'll be back for more. This is just one of the bumps on the road of season 2. So
Temptation.
a lot more.
November 16th too. Like if you want to come out to the Wayfarer Tampa, we're going to be talking about fear, and going through that. So yeah.
November 15th, but
15th.
Yes, 15th.
15th.
I just confirmed.
November 15th.
You're right, 15th.
1-5.
I added one.
At
executive producers and producers.
At 7 o'clock?
I should know that too.
If it goes good enough on the 15th, maybe it'll bleed over to the 16th. Yeah.
15th.
It will bleed into the 16th.
What time is it at?
7.
7
o'clock.
Let's go.
7 o'clock.
Executive producers really helping us out right now.
Buddy Brew on Kennedy.
That's
7
my
o'clock.
job.
Buddy Brew. We'll be posting about it on our socials because this will drop before then.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we'll be posting all about it. Look forward to seeing all of you there. Like and comment. Let us know what you guys are going through as far as fear goes. We'd love to engage with that, learn more about it, because I think, bringing it into the light is one of the perfect ways to, reduce the power that it can have over us. So
yeah.
Love it.
Thanks so much for coming through, and we'll see you next time.
Never alone.
Walk on.
Walk on.